listening to them. And your resume is very important. You want to really know your resume because you're going to be asked a lot of resume-based, behavioral-based, or case questions in the interview. You're going to be able to explain the certain things you put on your resume and how those things can help you in the job that you're doing. So currently I work as a staffing coordinator at a nursing home for veterans. When I was in my interview, my manager asked me how I would fit in to the job, and I kind of related my classes and my past internships to how it would be like a smooth transition, and I would already know a little bit of things I already be doing. Our turnover rate is something that companies really try to avoid. So your company is looking for you to have that stableness to where you want to stay at the company for a long time and grow the company. So you want to, if your company is really something you like, you want to make it known that you want to stay there for a long time. And then I've got to look for somebody in a couple months or a year or so. And you really want to convince the employer that you're the best applicant for the job. You want to let them know that you are able to do things that you are asked to do and you feel comfortable in the position that you're working for, and that you feel like it is a good place that it will be for you. Along with saying that, because they're going to ask if the company, if you're better for the company, but I also want to see that the company is a good fit for you. The goal is for the both employee and the employee to both benefit. You talk about your personal goals and see how, and show them that you are motivated and goal oriented. You want to be prepared. Prepare experiences that talk about with the interview, and during the interview you want to memorize at least 3 different scenarios in which you can bring up which you were successful in. So you always want to make sure you show up early. You want to give directions before the interview. And you don't want to have rush or go in sweating or seem frazzled and just seem unprofessional when you walk in the interview. You want to go in ready and calm and ready to talk. Something I do personally for interviews, if they're a little bit far away, I kind of do a test run. I'll go the day before at the same time, and I'd see what route is kind of better for me and see how early I would need to leave so I can get there at a good time. It's something that helps me do it. Mock interview is something that you can do. You can practice with your friend, parent, or anyone that you really know to practice questions that you'll be asked and answered. And you can either prepare what you're going to wear and just look at yourself in the mirror, or go over what yourself in the mirror, what you're going to say. So you want to avoid answering questions with a simple yes or no. You want to explain what you agree about and what you can elaborate. You can elaborate on what you're saying, and you just don't want to overdo it. But you can prepare what you're by repeating the question or saying it was a great question and then answering to something that can really help you. You want to sell yourself. Elaborate on your major achievements. You can say that you've helped the company reach 20% goals, or you were in a club on a campus that helped become successful and achieve milestones for the community. Stuff you want to bring is reliable resources. You want to bring resources that are reliable, and depending on the type of interview, you can bring samples of your past work or extra forms of your resume that you can give to other people in a group interview that may not have seen it. And just in case you might need to figure out or write down any hiring paperwork, you're going to bring in information that would help you, information about yourself, your address, and just other information you'll need to know. But you also don't want to be digging in your bag for the work. You want to have it readily available so you can just grab it and be ready to give it to them. And after you did your research in the beginning, you outlined your knowledge, and you want to develop questions that ask the interviewer. Cover information in your questions that was maybe already discussed that you want clarification on, or you want to ask different questions about tasks that you should be doing. And you just want to really go do your research, go in the company and the interview early, prepared, and be ready to be confident. And up next, we have Gabby sharing some tips about what can help with the interview.
Hi guys, I'm Gabby, and I'm going to be discussing some tips and musts for the interviewer. The interview is a huge part of a person's first impression of a company, and there are many things you can do to make it a great one. It's a very stressful experience usually for candidates, and it's all about making them comfortable, and it allows you to get the best answers out of them. Background checks are perhaps the most important aspect of creating your pool of candidates. In general, criminal checks are universal and credit checks are reasonable for anyone working with money. A good way to look at it is, if the job doesn't justify the screening, don't include it. You'll save time and money and avoid potential legal issues. Also, you may not be able to use the info to rule someone out. Before you do, check with your state laws. As an interviewer, you have some pre-interview homework to do too, not just the candidate. You should always have a list of questions ready. It's a good idea to use a combination of the different types of questions. Next, you want to know about your candidate. You should be aware of their previous positions and educational background so you can properly introduce them and ask the most relevant questions possible. Aside from reviewing their resume prior, you may notice they have skills you may not be familiar with. Some internet research can help with this. Just knowing keywords from the job duties they listed isn't enough to provide educated assessment of their talent, and it definitely isn't fair to them. Doing your research allows you to best cater your questions to the individual. Another must is to practice. Don't avoid practicing what you're going to ask. This will help you prevent saying something you didn't mean to, getting off track, or accidentally saying something inappropriate. Again, preparation is just as important on the interviewer's part, and doing so can prevent a lot of awkward situations and even lawsuits from arising. It will also prevent the interviewer from feeling unnatural and robotic. To get the best answers from the people you interview, you got to create a welcoming environment for them. A comfortable person who feels as if they're talking to a friend will be more likely to share info more openly, which benefits everyone. You can help make your candidate comfortable by being enthusiastic. A simple smile can go a long way. Outlining the interview structure goes along with making the candidate comfortable. You should first give a brief description of the company and outline the job duties before jumping into the questions. This gives them the opportunity to ask questions and know what to expect. Sometimes no surprises are best and can significantly reduce the candidate's interview anxiety. A good interview experience I had was at a local startup company. Everyone was very friendly, so I felt very welcome and was told exactly what to expect. I could tell how well the recruiters prepared for the interview by the way they asked engaging questions. It was a panel interview, and they even let me see the questions beforehand, which really helped. Engagement went both ways, and the interview itself just flowed really well. Another experience I had didn't go as well in terms of feeling welcome and like a valuable candidate. The interviewer wasn't very enthusiastic, and the entire process seemed rushed. The interview seemed almost robotic, with a lot of the questions being very general and even a bit repetitive. Needless to say, I didn't take the position and was left with a very negative impression of the company. A number one rule of thumb is to avoid simple yes or no questions. You want to phrase the questions in a way that allows the interviewee to expand. You should also avoid asking more than one question at a time. You don't want to overwhelm the candidate, and this would make it more difficult for them to provide adequate answers. The key is to keep all questions relevant to the position, but also be creative to keep their interest. Answer your questions carefully is another must. You want to watch what you ask and how you ask it. Any questions or commentary that could remotely imply bias, such as those pertaining to gender, religion, marital status, or family planning, are strictly off limits. You should also avoid pursuing questions that pry too far into a candidate's personal life, as this can cause some discomfort and awkwardness. As the interviewer, you don't want to talk too much. You're not just the person reading off questions, so you need to be engaged and give the person you're interviewing the chance to communicate as much as possible without interruption. The more they talk, the better, and the more you get to know them. On the deeper level, it becomes, why does this person do what they do, and how? This lets the candidate know you're genuinely interested in them and their skills. Although you want to give the candidate the opportunity to share as much as they'd like, it's important to stay on task. If you spend the interview chatting, you may make a hiring decision because you like the candidate versus whether they're truly qualified. There's nothing wrong with small talk, but the conversation should mostly stay professional and work-related to prevent sidetracking. Another good tip for an interviewer is to leave time for breaks. It's always nice to ask the candidate, especially if they have more than one person they're meeting. if the interview is lengthy, and if they need a restroom or water break. Better yet, bring them some coffee or have coffee, water, soda, and other refreshments available in the room. They could also use this time for questions if they wish. Just as you are looking for eye contact, body language, and appropriate dress, the candidate is also looking for these unspoken signals from you. Be sure your tone of voice is appropriate and professional. You should pay close attention to your own demeanor and mannerisms throughout the interview. You're representing your company and giving them an impression, so make sure your actions continuously reflect this. You should take notes on each candidate you interview, on comments they make, impressions, and reactions. It's best to keep the notepad and pen in your lap so that the interviewee can't see any notations you made. Furthermore, the person won't be able to see whether or not you're actually writing at all. If they see you writing a reaction to some comments and not others, it may affect what they're saying or planning to say. You may discover that your candidate is telling you information that contradicts your findings or what is in their resume. You have to be careful when confronting a candidate about this. They might be innocently mistaken or might have recalled things incorrectly. Calling them a liar is, of course, not the answer, so instead it's best to kindly ask them to explain to you the differences you have seen and heard elsewhere. Once the interview process has concluded and you have evaluated whether or not the person is fit for the job, follow up to let them know whether they're hired, by email or phone. Very often, people feel that they're left hanging after their interviews, so reaching out and expressing appreciation is one more way of extending a professional courtesy and gives the interview process closure. In conclusion, you want to create a positive and welcoming environment for your candidates. You should express that you are genuinely interested in them and their skills. Interviewing is intimidating as it is, but there's lots you can do to ease your candidate's stress. Now Andrew will summarize everything we've covered and run through the entire interview process from start to finish. Thank you.
So the interviewing process is one of the final steps of the hiring process. Typically, companies will begin with a phone screening and then move on to the in-person interview, a second interview, and possibly a third interview if they feel that they need another one. So the position that I am looking to hire is an accounting manager. So this would be the second step in the interviewing process, and this accounting manager should have a accounting degree and should work very well with balance sheets, journal entries, and financial statements. So the required traits and skills required for this this position would be at least a bachelor's degree in accounting, and they should be CPA certified. They should also have some previous management level experience because they were applying for an accounting manager job. On a day-to-day basis, this candidate will be substantiating financial transactions by auditing documents, and they will also be entering assets, liabilities, and other entries. Sorting through resumes is a important part of an HR manager's job. There's a couple tips and tricks you can use, such as skimming through resumes. So just basically looking for the qualifications necessary for the job and making your decision. After sorting through the resumes, you would conduct a phone screening, which would help speed up the process of searching for the most promising candidate. They also would save you the time and trouble of meeting with someone in person if they don't meet the needs of your company despite a strong resume. Preparing for the interview, the next step would be taking a couple minutes before the candidate comes in for the interview and prepare yourself a little bit, making sure they have all the qualifications necessary for the job, and yes. So another important thing to have would be a clear job description. You want a clear job description so you can have a one of the next thing I would do is decide the interview type. The type of interview I would decide on was a behavioral interview, so I can ask a variety of behavioral and situational questions and come to the conclusion of which applicant to hire. Body language is a very important part of an interview. So when you're waiting for an interview, you want to sit with good posture and your purse or briefcase to your left. So when